Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Keep Up with Pryme. Today we're holding the construction edition. I'm Laura Andradas from the marketing team. Joining me is Aske Holz, product manager at Pryme Global. He will be showing you the new features that we have launched in the last release of our applications. Once he's done, we'll have some time for the Q&A. So please write your questions in the chat or in the Q&A section as we go. And over to you, Aske. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. So for this webinar, we're looking at what's new with the November release. And we have a number of things across the different offerings we have. I've included everything that is included in our construction industry package and a little bit more as well. And also I've noted on each of the items which app they appear in. So if you're not using all of the different apps, it might not apply to you. But maybe take that as an opportunity to say maybe this app could be something that brings us some extra value. Starting in the setup area, we have a new feature in Progressive Advanced Projects called Expense Price Templates. And that allows you to set up a template that can be used for defining the expense markups or prices on a project. So previously, if you had a project, you would open up your project, and on that project, you can then define expense prices. This is still the same. You can define that for a certain type of expense, as a certain markup, etc. But you can now also use the get template function to get a predefined setup of the expense prices. So if I do this, I can see I, in this case, have one template, but you can have multiple different templates. And I could actually have a look at the lines here and see that I have predefined that hotel costs should have a markup of 17%, mileage should be at a fixed 0 price and be non-chargeable, and domestic travel should have a markup of always being £15 up. So you can create these templates and use them over and over again. And you can either apply them within the project, one project at a time. You can also use them when you're creating new projects with the import projects functionality, so you can define them there as well. Should make it a little bit easier if you have defined rules for markups of expenses that are different for different projects. Another thing we've done in the setup area is for the CIS RCT app. We use that for, of course, the construction tax or withholding. And we tried to make it a little bit easier to get started with. So we added a lot of extra documentation inside of the app. We still have our online documentation, which I recommend that you look at. But if you take something like CIS posting setup, there will now be explanations about how this is used, what it's for, etc. So an online guided experience. Now, I'm not seeing this for the first time. I have to click up here, but if it is the first time you open this page, you will get this information, seeing what the different things are. And you can also use this to get to the help, and you get a bit of explanation, and you also get a link to get to the online documentation directly. So hopefully that makes it a little bit easier to understand. In the planning area, we have made some adjustments or some improvements to our Pryme Project Work. This is the capability for you to create work items and assign them to resources. So if there's a piece of work that could either be a piece of administrative work, preparing something, doing a vendor assessment, it could be actual physical on-site work where you say this needs to be done. Maybe there are some steps to it that you need to keep track of. Then you can do that with Pryme Project Work. And here I can see my list of work items. I can see what I have due to to start now, not much, but there are definitely some things that are due to be finished today and something that is due to be finished soon. And I can, of course, have a look at that. So we're trying to make it a little bit easier in here with some tiles or some cues that give you that direct information. We also added that inside of our Kanban board, where we now have some groupings on the column level. Last time we looked at how the Kanban board can show you progress through different stages. We've now added options for having columns showing progress instead, so you can group things together and show everything that is not started, in progress, or completed. In this case, my in progress column includes 2 stages, both in progress and inspect would be considered to be in progress. So we can kind of condense that down. If you don't need the details of whether it is which stage it's in, but more high level, you can do those columns. And you can also do them by date. So I can look at things by due date, see what there is overdue, due today, tomorrow, next week, etc. And if I do this by swim lane at the same time, so assigned by swim lane, I get a very nice view of what we have. We can see Daniel has some work that is overdue, and Prakash has something that is due today and something that is due tomorrow. Of course, you could do the same with customers or projects. So it adds another dimension to how you're splitting things up and viewing it and reviewing it. In the work area, we have a new feature for purchase orders and purchase invoices. With Progressive Advanced projects, you've of course always been able to add invoice lines and purchase order lines for resources, but there has been a bit of a twist to it in that if you create a purchase order, you could not create a line of the type resource. So if it was for a project, so let me do it this way. If I create a new order here, and we say it's for Fabricam, then if I want to create a new line for a resource, I can now just add a line of type resource and then select what resource it is, and then it's added here, and I can add my project and task to it, which feels intuitive. In the past, if you wanted a resource line, you had to create a line of type GL account, and then in the resource field further out here, you had to select the resource. You can now just select the type resource. This doesn't change any posting. In the end, it gives you the same end result, the same entries, everything's the same. You can go either way. Some people just find it more intuitive that lines for resources are actually of the type resource. It should also help with some integration scenarios. We also have a new feature for approvals, reminders. We have already a number of reminders in Pryme Time, and one of the new features here is an approval reminder. So previously we had reminders for people who hadn't submitted their timesheets. They got a reminder. We had a reminder to the managers for the people who hadn't submitted their timesheet, so a kind of escalation reminder saying maybe you need to remind these people to submit their timesheets. And now we're moving on to the approvals area where you can get a reminder to the approvers if they have time they have not approved. You can define this inside of Pryme Time setup. There is a scheduled reminders feature, and we still have the unsubmitted timesheets to resources and unsubmitted timesheets to managers. Now we have the unapproved timesheet to managers as well. What this ends up looking like is an email, something like this, and where you get a list of all the timesheets you have for different employees that you have to approve. Maybe you have to approve all the time on the timesheets, but it could also be partially if you are a project manager and that in resource is only working part-time on the project you're managing, then your pending time to approval might be a subset of the total number of hours that they have submitted. If you're a line manager, of course, then it should be the full amount, but you might have, again, done a partial approval. So this should make it easier to make sure that everyone does their approvals on time, and so you're able to go on with invoicing, etc. Lastly, in the invoicing area, if you're using Pryme AP Automation, we can now require comments on rejection. So if you get a document for approval, you of course are able to either approve or reject that. That is the whole point of an approval flow. In the past, if you rejected something, you were not actually required to explain why you rejected it. But now we added that as an option. So in Pryme AP Automation setup, there is a field for forcing people to add a rejection comment if they reject something, which can make it a lot easier because you might have people rejecting, but without explaining why did they actually reject it, and then you have to try to find out. So should make it, again, a little bit easier. Hopefully that makes it a more smooth process with approvals with AP Automation. That's all we had on the agenda for new features and functions for November. I will then switch over to look a little bit on the roadmap for the future. This is not a complete roadmap. The roadmap is always in motion, but these are the things I picked out that I think are relevant for the construction industry. So as the way is with roadmaps, the closer you are, the more we have on the roadmap, and the further out we get, the more vague it gets. And then, of course, we fill in and add more to the roadmap further out. For February, we're generally adding more permission sets. That's mainly for read-only scenarios where we have admins who should be able to look at data but not actually change it. In Pryme Time, we're doing some additional calendar improvements. On the topic of calendars, we are also adding a work item calendar to Pryme Project Work. So a little bit like what we saw in the Kanban with a grouping by date, but here it will be a true calendar where you can drag and drop and change the due dates and start dates, etc. For subcontracting, and that is the Pryme Project Subcontracting, where you have the specific, this is specifically for the time and materials subcontracting, where subcontractors report back their time with timesheets. We will be adding a true approval workflow that is configurable, where you can set up rules about who should approve the subcontract statements, and hopefully that makes it a little bit easier as well. And we will also add a feature for automatic emailing out of the subcontractor statements, so you don't have to generate the PDFs and send them out manually. Coming to May, we have a time tracking outside of BC feature for Pryme Time. This is one of our big ticket items, something we've been talking about for a long time, and we hope to be able to deliver a first version of that in May. So that would allow you to do time tracking or time entry without actually opening up Business Central. It could be a small app that you have on the side where you track your time in an easy way without having to look at the rest of Business Central. So hopefully something that's a little bit more accessible and a little bit more friendly. We're also looking at adding a new app for project risk management. So this would be traditional risk management for projects where you define a risk register of different project risks and you assess them by their impact and their likelihood, and then you get a score out of that. That will at least be for a first version. Later on, we might look at actually adding a financial impact to that but we will work this out over time. So if you have any interest in this project risk management, please let us know. We're already working with some partners, but we would love to get some more feedback on what risk management features you would like to see in BC. We will add some more reports to the CAS RCT area to make that a little bit more complete. And moving on to August, we don't have that much on the roadmap right now, but at least for Pryme Time, we will try to add some improvements for description of time. That is, of course, mostly for additional work where the description of the work performed is interesting, if it is time and material. So we will add some policy checking by Copilot, where you will get a review, hopefully with a policy document that you can upload, and then it will check all descriptions and see if they fit with company policies before sending out the invoices, but also making suggestions to how those descriptions could be changed to be compliant with policy. That's all we had on the roadmap. I will again bring up the links to our project subcontracting and project work apps. If you haven't looked at them already, have a look. They're available on AppSource for download, and also there are more information on our homepage, prymeglobal.com. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out and ask some questions. We're happy to give a demo or answer any questions about our apps and offerings.